give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is gonna go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst. My name is Corey Tulaba. I am here, as always, with my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim. We are the NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. Albert, it's been a while, man. How's it going? Things have changed. I have a beard now.
You have a beard now. We made a little joke before we started. It was like, has it been that long? Did we get through a full season of Lost for you to grow out that beard? A lot of shit. I'm a dad. Yeah, shout out. I'm a dad now. So that's fun and crazy and really interesting. But we've got a lot going on, Corey, and it feels weird. Dad life has changed me. I've been thinking a lot about myself as a scout and my own biases and the way that I look at players. And I've been thinking a lot about how I want to change and improve and things I want to tweak. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to be here. We're talking about three really interesting prospects that I think may be well known to some, maybe not so much to others. So really excited to get into it and break down their games. And like, I love these preseason ones just because we're not going to go all the way deep into their games, but we are, like we texted, we were like, it's a little appetizer type of situation. So I'm excited for it.
You don't need a diving board necessarily. You know, we're not going into the deep end necessarily, but like still, you know, it's not the shallow end either. You're going to, you know, if you need floaties, you got to stay in the shallow end here because we're still going to talk some hoops and break these guys down enough that you can really get a feel for their game, but, you know, not so crazy that you feel overwhelmed because at the end of the day, these are, you know, preseason scouting reports and a lot changes, you know, like at this time last year, it felt like Zachary Richey was trending downwards, you know, after a weird week at Hoop Summit and then his showing in the FIBA tournament. And then all of a sudden he's the number one pick at the end of this. So like these are preseason scouting reports. It's important to keep that in mind because, you know, there are guys that I think, you know, I didn't think that Rob Dillingham was going to have a big year last year coming into the year based on what I had seen, play style, the whole small guard thing. And look at it. He went top 10, right? Like, so it's important to keep in mind the perspective of this is preseason, but let's have some fun with it.
But really quickly, Corey, also, and this was something that we both 3 years ago, we thought Jaden Hardy might have, you know, might be the first or second pick of the draft. So,
yeah,
at this time,
for sure,
3 years ago. So,
and that's why this is important. And I think Jaden Hardy is a good transition into this first guy that we're going to get into, which is Jalil Bethea, who is headed to Miami. He is a combo guard. He's listed at 6'4", 170 on Miami's website. And definitely an interesting prospect. I know he's somebody that you had mentioned early in the offseason. I think Paige likes him. I've actually seen him twice now. I saw him twice last year at the Jordan Brand Classic, and then I saw him at the Hustle and Heart Classic, which is like an OTE event that they do every year. And that was at your old alma mater, Baruch, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw him last year. So where do you want to start with him, man?
That's actually a really good question. I don't really know where to start with him, but I did. Okay, maybe we could just, instead of, you know, usually we go into like shooting, maybe we just go offense.
Okay.
How about that? Offense.
I think that's fair.
Broad stroke.
That's fair. I mean, I think the first thing that you have to bring up with him is that like he is a score first guy. Like he is a guy that is looking to put the ball in the hole. Like that is, I think, what his intrigue is. And it's where I think he feels most comfortable. I think his offense is interesting because while he is kind of one of these buckety guys, he isn't somebody who has to dominate the ball. Like he does play in a way where you go like, he's probably going to have high usage, but maybe it's not the most interesting part about him, but he's certainly like a guy where it's like he might be one of, the premier scorers coming into this pre-draft cycle before any college games are actually played.
Right. Corey, I wanted to say this. I liked what you said, right? It's something I wrote in my notes. Not much of a passing montage when it comes to Jalil Bethea, right? But something that I had on my mind was a couple years back, heading into his freshman season at Baylor, we had, I don't think it's a 1-for-1, but we were thinking, okay, Keontae George is going to be a bucket getter type of guy for Baylor, right? And he was, right? To his credit, he was. However, he did show some playmaking chops that we were very surprised by, right? And that just continued to be a part of his game. And now in the NBA, it seems like that's going to be a part of his game, right? He's going to be able to pass the ball. I'm not saying that this is a 1-for-1 thing, but the reason why I want to give Jalil a little bit of a runway here as he starts his freshman season in Miami, because what if he's a guy that ends up surprising us a little bit? Right? What if he ends up showing some passing ability, some passing chops, some playmaking ability, and it might just kind of shock the world, right? Once again, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but Keontae George came to mind because when I was watching Jalil, I had the same thought. He's a guy that likes to get his shot, but there's some stuff off ball that's interesting with him, right? Like I thought he had some really, really nifty cuts, right? Off ball, backdoor stuff. Just because the thing with Jalil that we need to mention, he's a really good athlete. This guy is fast as hell. Like in my notes, I was like, if you're side by side with him, you won't be side by side with him for long. He is the Noah Lyles right now, right? He has that type of, like, I'm not saying he's an Olympic sprinter, but he's fast as hell is my point, right? And so there are some real athletic advantages that he has. And watching him off ball, there were a couple times then when he was able to use some of those athletic tools to his benefit off ball. And so I kind of want to start there where I agree with you, Corey. The passing is not a marquee skill for him right now, but if you watch the tape, he's not like the worst passer either. And I'm wondering if potentially in a bigger role, higher volume role for Miami, maybe he gets an opportunity to show and grow into some of that passing ability.
Yeah, I had in my notes for his playmaking, I put capable, adequate pick and roll ball handler. He had a good assist to turnover ratio in the Nike EYBL. It was 1.3 to 1, which is, it's not like awesome, but it's better than having a negative assist turnover ratio. I think he's more reactive than like anticipatory. Like he's not going to manipulate a ball screen and, understand that if he takes a couple of dribbles to the right, the defense is going to shift over and then he can, hit a pass, skip pass, on the weak side of the court or anything like that. His passing is usually like after multiple dribbles when he doesn't have anything, or he gets like so deep in the paint that the help like over rotates so much that it leads to like, a drop off, or he's getting blitzed out of a pick and roll. But he's adequate. He's got potential. Like I think the Keontae George point is a really interesting one, actually. Like where we were like in the preseason scouting report we did on him, we were like, we don't think he's a bad passer, but he's more of just like a one more, like he might make a quick decision, but it's not going to be anything crazy. And now, he looks like he could play some point guard, or he has been playing point guard the last couple of years, but like he looks like a legitimate point guard option. I still think ultimately he's better as a combo. And they still need to find him, a permanent backcourt partner in Utah. But like, I think Keontae is a good example. And like, that's kind of like what you would hope for, I think, if you were being optimistic with Jalil as a passer. I do think that the point you made about his cutting, I had that too, where he uses like the gravity of his ability to shoot to kind of take advantage and like slip back door. He had 20 dunks in the EYBL, which is good. He's like a very good athlete. He's creative in midair. So he has kind of, the 3-level scoring potential that you want to see. I mean, obviously he has like the deep bag. He's got a very strong handle. He's very like herky jerky and quick in his crossovers and how he's attacking. And he uses that. He can really create a lot of space. He's got the step backs. He's crafty in that regard, and he's creative with the ball in his hands. He can really separate and create advantages. I do question like how efficient is he going to become in that role when it's going to come down to like whether the shots are going to go in or whether they're not going to go in. Because I'm not like in love with his shot, like his form, and like seeing it in person. Like there are times where it just like looks super uncomfortable. He has that one motion push shot where it's beneficial in that it's like a little kid shooting on like a net that is too high for them. It allows you to have extended range, but it doesn't always allow you to have the best control in where you're going. He did shoot it well, but I've just seen like with my eyes where I go, all right, I just need to see it against like legit competition a little bit more often. I think that he's got like a floppy follow through on his shot where it sometimes that's why it's like a little inconsistent. His release point, I think, is low when it's like when somebody's contesting him. It's a little bit it's raised when he has more space, which is good. But I think that the fact that he can be that on or off ball guy is what makes him interesting as a shooter. Because I think that he's actually, to me, I like his shot more when not only just like in catch and shoot scenarios, but like when he's shooting off movement. Because I think he's actually like a legit movement shooter. Like, and he's comfortable shooting either direction. A lot of move. It's easier to shoot off movement when you're like your momentum is carrying you to the left as a right-handed shooter because it's easy to get into that one motion. But he's comfortable coming the other way. And like I think at the next levels, he's going to be able to come out of like those corner zoom actions and either, if a defense tries to cut underneath because they're afraid of him attacking the rim, he's going to be able to shoot, open jumpers. And I think that's beneficial. Or he is going to be able to get to the rim when they chase over. So, and again, in those actions, I think that's where you'll see like his playmaking pop a little bit, where he's causing the defense to collapse because he's getting into the teeth of the defense and he's drawing kickouts. So I think he's interesting in that regard. And that on-off ball stuff is super interesting but I do, if he's going to be taking a ton of tough shots, I want to know what the percentages are like because he's in that weird tweener, size, like height, and then like also the weight. So it's like there is potential for him to be like the Nick Smith kind of like, oh, you were a really good scorer before college, but like you're not really strong enough to handle the physicality. You're not really efficient enough to have the ball all the time. So what are we? Are we a 6-man? Are we a G League guy? Or does the shot really come around? And because he's, a lot more athletic than Nick Smith was, is there like Anthony Simons upside? So these are the questions that I have for Jalil Bethea, like coming into this season.
Yeah. No, Corey, I think all of your concerns are extremely fair. The only thing that I kind of wanted to say, not necessarily in his defense, it's more of something that I want to monitor with him. I felt like although he's 170 pounds, I'm really curious to see what he's going to weigh in when the season starts, just because I thought, although he's on the lighter side, I thought his frame looked decent, where it looked like he's going to be able to add a good amount of strength. And so I'm very curious to see what that offseason workout program in Miami does for him and where he ends up when the season starts. And if he can get up to 185, 190, that'll be really interesting, right? Obviously, that's a big increase in weight, but I think it's possible, especially at that age. And if that's all you're doing, it's very possible in my mind. A couple of things that I wanted to touch on. Super long strides with him, and sometimes like watching him, he kind of even reminded me about like a little more athletic, more shifty Isaiah Wong at times. Even the way that he was moving was kind of what came to mind at times. But like you said,
I was just thinking that name, dude. Maybe it's the Miami thing. I don't know.
Maybe, but there's something there, right? I think it's the strides. I don't know what it is. I like the handle, like you said. In terms of, I did want to touch on his finishing because I thought he did a really good job, as we already mentioned, with the cutting. But I thought at times, like when he had the ball in his hands and he was attacking the rim, sometimes it felt like he was attacking the rim without a plan. There was a bit of a wildness to him that I didn't absolutely love. And I thought there were some opportunities where he could have leveraged his speed and his advantage creation stuff into opportunities for others that I thought he missed. And I'd like to see him grow into that. But to his credit, there were some really nice finishes, and there are times when he really uses his athleticism. I thought his left hand finishing was really solid. That's something that he likes to do, is use his offhand. Also, a game that really stuck out to me was the one when he played against Carter Bryant. That game he went off, and he had a really strong game. And Corey, he showed a lot of the things that you highlighted in terms of his strength, some movement shooting, some really nice catch and shoot shooting. The only thing with me with his jumper, and you're the shot doctor here, but the one thing that I didn't love is with that push shot, at times his follow through, it seemed like he would shoot and then jerk his hand back immediately. And I thought it looked really weird. But the thing that I've taught myself, and I learned from you over the years, is that just because a shot looks weird, I can't let that completely color my evaluation of a prospect shooting. And that's the mistake that I made with Tyrese Halliburton years ago, and I still regret to this day, right? But just because a shot looks weird or looks different doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad. It's more of, we have to see what this looks like over a larger sample size. And so with Bethea, I think, as you mentioned, Corey, it's going to be something that we're going to have to monitor and see how he shoots within the role that he's in for Miami. I think that'll be important, right? What type of role he's given, the type of equity he's given as an offensive player, and to see how he shoots within in that role, I think is going to be really interesting. And so I like everything that you said, Corey. There are real question marks, I think, that we're going to have to, monitor over time. But just the baseline skills that he has. Well, first, the baseline athleticism, I like. The frame, I like. The offensive mentality that he has, there's like a dog mentality to him that I really like. And it's just going to be a matter of how does he fine tune everything during his freshman season is going to be something for us to watch.
100%. I think his finishing, talking about how he can be out of control sometimes, spot on. I think he has really good strides when he's like driving in the hoop. But sometimes he leaves his feet like really early, and because he's so athletic and he's like good at those extension finishes, like you said, with either hand, like the left hand finishing, which one of the prospects we're going to talk about today, not so much, but Jalil Bethea like has that left hand finish with the extension. But sometimes when he leaves his feet so early, he gets himself in mid-air no man's land, and it looks like, he hits the floor hard, and it's like the pole vaulter that didn't make it over the the bar. So a lot of Olympics references today. We're crushing this. Yeah. So, but he definitely needs to get stronger too. I mean, listed at 170 on the team website, doesn't make you super excited. And when I saw him, the Jordan Brand Classic was a few months ago, but he looked skinny still. So, and look, he's young, he's not going to put on 15 pounds of muscle in a year and whatever. Like, he'll get stronger. How strong can he get? How much weight can he put on? Can he get to 190? With these guys, I think it's a lot of times it's just hard because they're so exciting in high school when they have all of this on-ball usage, and sometimes even in college. But it's just like when you're in that 6'3", 6'4", but you're more of a scorer than a playmaker, and you're a little light, it's hard if you're not going to be super efficient. And that's really what I'm going to be looking for. It's like, can he be a super efficient guy who's just like a legitimate shot maker? Because if so, then there's a real chance that he could be like a good starter in the league. But at the same time, it's like that bar is so high. I mean, like people are questioning like, oh, are the Blazers going to start Anthony Simons with Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson? And that dude is like a legit
version of this
25 point per game scorer. So it's hard with these guys, but he's interesting. And, Miami needs some interesting guys. We liked watching Keyshawn George last year, but
nobody else.
They need some fun. They need some fun this year after last year. Touching on his defense quickly, what did you think of him defensively?
So, Corey, this is something that I wrote down. Like, we say this every damn year, but high school defense is the hardest thing to evaluate on planet Earth. It's really hard, especially
Yeah.
if we're looking at it through the lens of how does this extrapolate or develop on the NBA level. It's really hard to tell. So I'll just write like sorry, I'll just say from what I wrote. Just not offensive was what I wrote at times. Like I thought it was okay. I thought there were some things to be so like, like his offense, I thought there were times where defensively even it felt like he was playing without a plan at times. But once again, like I don't want to freak out on that or even like hold that against him because high school defense is so hard. So anyway, the main gist of my defensive scouting report with him is wait and see. Because I didn't want to make any hard judgments on it because there were a lot of things I did not like and I don't want to hold it against him too hard. So
yeah, I put I thought he moves well laterally.
Yeah.
Good at flipping his hips. I think when he's like really engaged, takes away space, and he uses his length. And I think that's important, especially when he might not have the strength to defend more physical guys. And I think that's a legit worry, like guarding up for him. But like if you're going to guard guys that are maybe a little stronger, you definitely want to like take away space and have active hands and make them work instead of letting them operate, dictate the possession. Just like with his offense where he's like herky jerky, I think his feet can be a little fidgety, but typically I thought he played with good energy. When he sees a screen, he's good at like stepping over it early so he doesn't get hammered by it, because when he does get hit with a screen, he's not good at getting through it right now. And again, I think that comes back to his strength. I think guard to guard, he'll be switchable. Like he'll be able to guard ones and twos and maybe some like smaller threes, like more finesse based. But that's like the optimistic him being a 3-position defender right now. But a guy like this, like if he can be adequate defensively, which I think he has the tools to be, which is just like wanting to guard and doing it like possession by possession consistently, then if his offense is good enough, that makes him a really intriguing player. If he's going to be a complete zero, then it's like, if your offense isn't special, then he's like a second rounder. Yeah. So that's kind of the conundrum with these guys, but I think he'll be adequate. I mean, look, he's a freshman. He's in a good conference. He's light. He's going to struggle at times, but like, can you see the potential there with him? So we'll see. That's what's interesting. Do you have like a range where you think you're going to have him?
I was thinking if like where I'm going to have him in the at the start of the season
into the year.
Yeah, I was thinking like potentially late lottery, 14, 17, that range was where I was thinking. But of course, who knows?
Of course. I mean, this is throwing darts at a board right now. Yeah, I'll probably have him. I'm going to have him in like the 22 to 25 range to come in to the year. I think when I saw him, the 2 times I saw him, I just wasn't really like blown away.
Got it.
It didn't like stand out. Like when I saw him in the Hustle and Heart Classic, it was the Carter Knox show. Like I was like, oh my God. And then the Jordan Brand Classic, I mean, it was like Cooper Flagg and,
Dylan Harper,
all those guys. So yeah, Dylan Harper put on an absolute show. So, like Derek Queen continued to be like the best player every time he was on the floor, which is a theme from every time I've seen him. Liam McNeely, it was loaded. So he just didn't really stand out, which part of me was like, it's hard for everyone to stand out. Especially like, Dylan Harper, Brooklyn, he's from the tri-state area. Yeah. He was coming at Cooper to put on a show. Like, it's hard in those kind of scenarios to really like have it be like a standout showing in those kind of situations. Right. But yeah, in person, I just wasn't like blown away by any means, but he's good. He's interesting, and this is a deep class. So this, having somebody in the lottery in this class or having somebody even in the 20s in this class is different, like what we were accustomed in 2024, right? So, he's interesting. I'm excited to watch him in Miami. Who do you want to cover next?
I think we should hold off on Nolan till the end. So
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with that. So we are going to talk about Kon Knueppel, who is headed to Duke. He is listed at 6'7", 217 on Duke's website. And I don't know about that. He's listed at 6'5" on the Jordan Brand roster. So I think there's some shenanigans going on with, a team site listing there. But if he's 6'7", my goodness. I mean, let's go. I love this dude.
Yep.
He,
Yep.
I think he is so good. He actually did stand out in the Jordan game. Like, he didn't have a million touches, but anytime he had the ball, it was like, oh, a good decision is being made. I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to score. He's just very skilled. And I think he is going to be, he's actually going to get minutes on this Duke team because I think he's better than some of the returners. And he's got a strap. And I think, anytime you're a prospect with a strap, you become interesting to me, especially when, you got some size to you. And I think the fact that, again, he's a very vanilla looking, like Midwest white dude, people are going to sleep on his actual skills. But this dude can freaking play, man.
Yeah. Corey, my first line in my notes for him is, and this was originally talking about his jumper, but I just applied it to his whole game. There's no wasted motion to his game.
Yeah.
He is an extremely intelligent and efficient basketball player that knows, I think he's very aware of his weaknesses and where he lacks. And he compensates for all that by just being really efficient, really smart, and really tactful with how he plays and moves and functions on a basketball court. This is a guy that knows, like, he looks himself in the mirror and he goes, yeah, I'm not Jalil Bethea in terms of athleticism, but I've got my brain, I've got my shooting ability, and I've got more handle than people will give me credit for. And he's a really, really interesting, kind of one of these like farm strong, really talented basketball players. And so my biggest thing with him is there's no waste in his game, and he plays 0.5 basketball all the time. Whether it's with his decision making or where he puts himself on the floor or the way that he reads defenses, this is an extremely intelligent basketball player that knows exactly what he wants to do at all times to put himself or his team in a winning position, is where I'm at with Kon. So yes, Corey. And we texted, we were like, let's talk about him, but we didn't talk about him at all to each other. And I feel exactly the same. I think this guy fucking rocks at basketball.
He does. He's just, and he's the kind of guy that, again, I think people are going to sleep on him. And I get, like, Duke's roster is freaking loaded. It's deep. Like, dude, I think Darren Harris is like one of the best incoming freshmen in the country. I don't even know if he's going to play. But I think Kon is going to play. Farm strong is a great way to describe him. Trailer strong. So as far as and I don't know if you were able to find, on Synergy, all I could find was his EYBL stuff.
Same.
But he shot 46.4% on catch and shoot shots, 41.5% on dribble jumpers. He's got high release, solid, balanced base. He can shoot it like when he is just straight up like balanced, ready, catch and shoot, or he can shoot it like off balance and like finish like on one leg faders, and he can shoot it off, around either shoulder. He's a legit shooter. He's not going to shoot 50% like Reed or anything like that, but like, this is a guy who you look at his shot and you're like, this dude has been a shooter all his life. This is not something he's had to develop. Like, he's been since he was, playing 6U AAU. I don't even know if that exists, but sometimes I see those best second grader in the country videos. But but his shot versatility too, man. Like he can come off a screen with the ball in his hands and like pull up off of a ball screen as the initiator, but he can also pick and pop as a screener. He can shoot off movement. Like he's just really fun. I think offensively, he's one of the most complete offensive players like in this incoming freshman class. He does have weaknesses that we'll touch on, but like just as far as like his shooting, his shot making, his playmaking, his handle, you touched on like how people are going to sleep on his handle. Like this dude's handle is super tight. Like it's ridiculously tight. It's more creative than you'll think it is. And he has like a really quick cross that he uses. Like he'll set you up with a couple of, between the legs or behind the back, and then hit you with a really low, quick cross. And he has like good first step burst. He doesn't have another gear after the first step.
Correct.
But he has that because he gets so low, he's able to kind of like explode off the starting blocks. But he's strong. So he's Midwest strong. So he's able to kind of deal with guys on his shoulder and not get flustered when he has somebody on his hip or behind him or whatever. And that's where he'll use those decelerations and, he can get to a little floater, or he loves like pulling up and doing the little like post game, fadeaways or whatever. He's just like the definition of crafty is what he is.
Corey, he's clearly watched a little bit of Luka Doncic. Clearly. Yeah. It's because of everything we just talked about. He's a big kid too. He's not Jalil, but we're not worried about his weight. Or we might be worried about his weight the other way. You know
he looks good. You see those Duke videos. He looks cut up. Maybe he's gonna get that extra gear.
Hey, maybe you're right. But if you watch some of the high school stuff, there's some doughy footage of him, and it's like, okay. But you're right. In the Duke footage, he looks great, and that's a really interesting and exciting thing with him. For me, and I know we're not doing the deep dive right now, but I just, in my notes, I had to write new age Glenn Rice, Mike Miller. Like I need to throw these names out there early, because watching him, I'm like, okay, I literally went back and was watching Glenn Rice play for Michigan, was watching Mike Miller early days. And yeah, like obviously a different time. They were running Mike Miller off a pin down for him to take 18-foot jumpers, right? Different game, different world we live in now. However, Kon is a really interesting player because he's going to have all that shooting gravity, and people are going to see it from day one. It's going to be real with him. But as you mentioned, Corey, and you've highlighted, he can do things with the ball in his hands. And part of that is the passing. And I really wanted to highlight that. And I said this to you earlier, that he's got a little bit of that 0.5. So no, not a little bit. He has real 0.5 basketball ability with the way that he's thinking the game so quickly. He moves the ball really, really well. Like really well. He makes fast decisions. He's a really efficient mover. Like it's something that I wrote in my notes. He knows how to move and make himself available to his teammates always. And I love that about his game. And so the main conclusion with him is I think he has a very simple and nuanced game, but I don't mean simple in terms of like the things that he's able to do. He could do a lot of different things, but he tries to keep things simple is my ultimate point. Like, I don't think he's ever trying to be very flashy or have all the attention, but that kind of lulls you to sleep and gets you to not really recognize how much he's actually doing on the floor. And to your point, Corey, with his handle and his ability, like, the strength is really a big part of him. Like he'll take that first step and get by you or get you on your hip, and he'll stay in front of you because of how strong he is, and he knows how to use his bigger frame. So I'm right there with you, man. I think he's awesome.
Yeah, there's no extra. He's not doing things to like show that he can do them. Like he's efficient with his movements. And that's the kind of player that you want. Like he's not going to be a number one option, at Duke. He's not going to be one, I don't think, in the NBA either. So you want guys who are not going to do all of that extra, be efficient when they do have the ball and what they're trying to do with it, because they know what they're going to do with it, and be able to read the game at a high level so that they can get the ball where it needs to go, especially when they're playing with higher level players. And his playmaking, super impressive, right? Like really slick pick and roll playmaker. He can make pocket passes. He's got height, so he could see over the top, and he can handle doubles. When teams try to blitz him or whatever, he can throw the lob up to somebody who can go up and get it, which he'll have a bunch of at Duke this year. He's when he's doing like playing out of ISOs, and I think lull guys to sleep is really a good way to put it, because he likes to play out of like hezzies and stuff. But he's more likely to maybe like drive and kick than make any kind of like high level cross court pass. It's just like, I'm going to get in the paint. Guys are going to collapse. But I think he's just high level feel. He makes quick decisions, and the decisions are good.
Yep.
I trust him. I know if he's making a play, it's not because he's trying to bail himself out at the last minute. It's because he's anticipating that it's going to happen, and he's going to put the ball where it needs to go. So I love him as a passer. I love him as a creator. I love him as a shooter. You see it, the footwork and the skill level, like it's all there. I do think, and maybe him getting in better shape will help. The finishing needs some work. He was 50% overall in the EYBL this year, 52.8% in the half court, 0 dunks, according to Synergy. Concerning for somebody who is, 6'5" or listed at 6'7", from the wing. I think he might have small hands. He airballed the dunk that he tried on a breakaway in one of the EYBL games. Like, it was one of the things where he just lost control of it and the ball went over the rim on the opposite side. And so he obviously doesn't have a ton of bounce. He's very ground bound. And in that, he has to settle for like a lot of underhand scoops, so he did get blocked a good amount as well. So I think he's going to have to like mix up his angles and, try to like execute some like spin off the glass. And like, maybe instead of going underhand, he's going to have to like float it over. Or he's going to, just try to be super aggressive and try to utilize his strength. Now, a lot of times, he'll like get down low and he'll kind of like turn his back and try to like, turn it into like a post up or something. But the finishing, I think, needs some work. And the other thing is super right hand dominant. Like, all of his finishes are to the right. I think there were 5 out of 54 attempts where he used his left hand. Now, it's not that he's not finishing on the left side, but he tends to come back to his right hand a lot when he is finishing on that side. And it's not like, he's up in the air laying it up. A lot of it is like he gets to like one of those post moves that he tries to do and finishes in almost like a shoot, like he's shooting it out of a post up rather than like laying it up. But that's like my main concern with him, is like his finishing. I think his shooting and all the other stuff that he does is good enough that it's not like a big concern, like with him as a prospect. I think it's something he'll figure out and like be good enough at. Like, not concerned at all from where I'm going to have him in the preseason, ranking wise. So, but it is something that he needs to work on and he needs to figure out, because, you got to be able to finish near the hoop. Like, you just have to.
Corey, but I think the important point is the one that you started with, where you're like, I think the weight loss is going to help him. Or maybe it's not even weight loss. Maybe it's the chiseling of his weight, right? Maybe he's the same weight, but now, he's got a little less fat, more muscle. So I think that's going to be really interesting for us to watch and to see how that develops. You're completely right about in terms of what we saw, but the fact that he has good touch makes me optimistic about him getting more into his floater stuff. We shall see, right? And another name that came to mind when I was watching him was like, what if he's just like Bojan Bogdanovic? Right. Yeah. When, at his prime, and what type of player that looks like. So I think there are a lot of different outcomes with him, but clearly the athleticism is, I mean, I started out right by saying he's not Jalil Bethea in that department. So not a big time vertical athlete, but still, even though, he lacks that vertical athleticism, I think he moves well side to side. I think defensively, I'm sure we're not going to have a long conversation about that, but I think, he was able to use his strength to his advantage a lot, and we'll see. Like, I think he's somewhere in the middle, Corey. I don't think he's 6'7", but I do think he might be taller than 6'5". So maybe he's like 6'6", 6'6" and a half, and who knows, maybe he grows into 6'7", and then he's even more interesting, right? So The thing with him that I like though is you're right. Like obviously he's got to continue to work on the finishing, but if he's in better shape and he continues to get taller and he adds to his repertoire down there, then we have reason to be more optimistic, I think, than where we are right now.
Yeah, for sure. In the chat, shout out to everybody watching live. Back with us after a little break. Draft Panda says, how do you weigh the depth of Duke versus the skill of the recruits? I feel like Kon might get pushed out of the rotation like 2 or 3 years, plus might be a great NIL and college player. I mean, it's possible for sure. It's hard. Like I said, I love Darren Harris from Duke. I'm going to have a film session with him on the No Ceilings YouTube channel coming out soon, breaking down his film. He might get pushed out too. Like, somebody's got to get pushed out, so it's certainly possible, but I just think he's so good and he's so easy to fit in alongside the guys that they already have. And he's a knockdown shooter. So it's like he has too many things going for him right now, but it wouldn't shock me if Isaiah Evans got pushed out of the rotation, right? Like he, to me, is probably the most likely guy to see that happen. But it's definitely possible, and it's something you have to weigh. But still, until I see him get pushed out of the rotation, I think he's so damn good that he's not going to. And I'm going to base my evaluation on that, and then I'll adjust accordingly. Talking about his defense, you mentioned like I think Kon is very athletic. He just doesn't have bounce.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's a smooth mover.
Yep. Coordinated.
Obviously, he's got a good frame to handle physicality, and I think that'll get better. Again, like I think we're already seeing it with the videos that they're putting out that he looks leaner and stronger. He can flip his hips, he plays with his chest, he can absorb contact. I thought he got stuck on screens a fair amount, and he struggles to get like skinny and get over them. But I think he makes smart rotations off the ball. He knows when to be the low man. He knows when to tag the roll. He'll X out. I don't think he's going to be like an elite event creator where he's like constantly in the passing lanes or like coming over and blocking a ton of shots, again, because he doesn't have crazy bounce. But I do think he has quick hands and good anticipation. So like he will get his fair share of steals or blocks, even if he's not going to be like a stock monster, just because I think he reads the game so well. So I think he's going to hold up fine defensively because he's strong enough to handle physicality, and then he's also like smooth enough as a mover with the feel on that end to balance it all out.
Yeah. And Corey, to your earlier point about the whole Duke rotation thing, I mean, last year heading into the season, we thought Justin Edwards was going to be incredible for Kentucky. We thought he was going to go off, be like a number one option, maybe even for them. And we had real doubts about Rob Dillingham. We barely talked about Reed Sheppard, right? And things changed over the course of the season. Justin Edwards didn't have the season that we thought he was going to have. And same goes for Rob Dillingham. And then Reed Sheppard had an incredible season, right? DJ Wagner too. Although, Corey, I think you and I, we had some idea that DJ Wagner might have that type of season after what we...
True.
Anyway. And that's that's not a pat on our back. That's just what we felt at the time. Also, so with Duke, like they have Proctor coming back, they've got Foster coming back, and they're adding Isaiah Evans and Malik and Cooper Flag. There are a lot of names. Correct. There are a lot of names, but you never know till they roll out the balls and they start playing, right? And I think even Corey, what you mentioned, the fact that they're featuring Kon in these social media posts, I think that means something. Right. If he wasn't somebody that they were seriously looking at, maybe he wouldn't be on so many of those posts. Right. So we shall see. And, obviously things will play out the way that they will. And, Isaiah Evans, too. Corey, I don't remember how you felt about him at Hoop Summit, but I thought he was just fine. And so we shall see.
Yeah. I liked his how hard he was playing.
Yeah.
For sure. But it was a lot of one-on-one stuff. He was very, very, very skinny.
Very skinny.
So I think he's got a lot of work to do for sure. But yeah, he plays a lot of ISO ball, looking to shoot, those guys, again, it's hard. And he's like, if Isaiah Evans was as tall as Brandon Ingram, because he's going to get comped to a guy like Brandon Ingram because he's skinny and he has like that same kind of style game. If he was as tall as Brandon Ingram, I'd feel more confident he was going to be on the floor getting minutes, but like he's like 6'5".
Yeah.
You know, he was really good at the Jordan game when I saw him. Like he went on a heater, and like really looked good and was hitting like super tough shots. So like there's always going to be, you know, an opportunity that he's just such a good shot creator, right? That it just works. But I think he's kind of the guy who gets pushed out just because there's so many other guys who do need the ball in their hands or going to dictate those possessions. But yeah, I think Kon is not going to be one of those guys. I'm going to have him in my top 10 coming into the year. I think he's super good at basketball.
Corey, have you done a top 10 so far?
Yeah.
Same.
I don't want to say like it's like finalized. I actually have like a loose, probably like top 75 or so. I've watched a fair share of guys in depth so far this year. Plus the guys who were like returning last year.
True.
You know, I'll tell you what though. Great international class. A lot of fun guys. A lot of fun international guys. And we're gonna hit maybe the most fun of those international guys in Nolan Traore, who we got to see at Hoop Summit. So Traore just had a really good tournament at the U18s for France. He was one of the standouts at the Nike Hoop Summit. He is a couple of fun measurements with Traore. If you remember, at Hoop Summit, they measured like the measurements for the world team came out one day, and then the next day everybody was taller. So the first measurement, Traore was 6'3" in shoes with a 6'6" wingspan, 185 pounds. The next day he was 6'4.5" in shoes with a 6'6" wingspan, 185 pounds. I'd say he's probably more 6'3" than 6'4.5", but either way, like he's long. I think he's strong, and he's one of these guys who I think is so skilled that like if he's 6'3", it's a legitimate 6'3". It's not like he's, you know, like Rob Dillingham being listed at 6'3" last year. So, but man, he's good, huh?
First off, Corey, I want to say I actually think he might be closer to 6'4" because me in shoes, I'm 6'3", and I thought he was definitely like clearly taller than me. So I was actually feeling like, oh, he might be like 6'3.5", 6'4", maybe even a little bit taller. I don't know, but
that would be
great.
To
say that. Yeah, exactly. Makes him even more interesting. Also, like maybe the hair was a part of it too, but no, he's got a great looking physique. I thought like physique looked great in person. Yeah. The way that he was moving, communicating, carrying himself on the floor, it just screamed like leadership, professionalism. I'm a pro already type of energy was what I got from him all week long when we were watching him in practices, scrimmages, games, whatever. It just an extremely interesting. I got some intel from Coach Marshall Cho, who coached the world team at the Nike Hoop Summit. And he was like, this kid is one of the smartest kids he's ever come across, like ever. An extremely intelligent basketball player who just really studies and knows the game really well. He has like really special instincts as an offensive player, the way that he reads the defenses, the way that he carries himself, the way that he reads his teammates. VJ Edgecombe, right after the game, when he said he's the best point guard I've ever played with before, which is an incredible statement as well. Just a pick and roll maestro, a guy that can really split a double team, does a really good job of that. Passing instincts, touch, vision, really special stuff with him. I'm in love with the kid. Like and also Corey, I remember there was one day we were watching the world team practice and they went through a shooting drill and he didn't hit all the shots, but it looked good to me. Like it looked really good to me. And I was really intrigued by it. And I don't think he'll ever be like a high volume 3-point shooter, but if he can hit him enough, it's more than enough.
Yeah. It's the like the SGA bar right? Like he shot 1-3 in college, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like the form looks good, right? He shoots them. He's reluctant when he's got a defender on him from 3.
Right.
But if he can be a little bit more loose with his shooting and a little more confident in shooting contested shots from 3, I think it'll be great. He's, I think, a good enough shooter that he's going to be able to hit off ball shots, and that'll allow him to play next to other guys who need the ball in their hands, and that's like important. But he is so good with the ball in his hands that ultimately, if you're drafting him, you want him to lead your team. You mentioned VJ Edgecombe, best point guard ever. Like he played with some damn good point guards at Lehigh, VJ Edgecombe. So he's got everything you want out of a point guard. Like he can make every play. Super quick processor, right? But he's creative too. He's not just making simple passes. He's making creative passes. I mean, I'm sure some of you have seen the like loose ball, throw the ball over my head, and get it right to my guy for the finish, like crazy highlight from the FIBA tournament. But, he can do like all of the get into the paint because he's a walking paint touch.
Yes.
Like if you watch the FIBA tournament, he absolutely spammed like these drop offs because he was just getting into the paint at will and just dropping off to his bigs in the dunker spot. But he can also like get into the paint, driving kick. He can run a ball screen and like make all of the pick and roll passes, whether it's to the roll man or like painting the corners, right? Like shifting the D. There are definitely, you could tell he's young and he's still learning because there are definitely times where I thought like, especially in that FIBA tournament, he was like a little lazy with some of his passes, especially like the cross court stuff, and like that'll clean up over time. But like he is just so capable of making all of those plays that he's going to be a problem as a playmaker. But like what makes his playmaking so good is that like he can score. Yeah. Like you talk about his 3-point shooting, but he can really pull up in the mid range, and he's like creative. He's got a bag. He can like. His step back, he actually creates like a ton of space off his step back, not just like a little bit of space. Some guys, like you'll watch them step back and it's like they don't create enough space so the defender can contest and they have to move off the ball, and they just killed their dribble because they thought they were going to, take a shot and they couldn't. He really creates a lot of space off his step backs. He's got like the floaters. He's really long, and he's bursty in short spaces. And he plays with that pace. So like he'll get to like the little elbow area and then boom, explode. He's to the hoop. He can go high off the glass. He can do scoop shots. He's not like super above the rim, but he can definitely like, he's not Kon, like he'll dunk, and he'll go up with 2 hands, 1 hand. He can finish through contact. You mentioned really good at splitting double teams. Mm-hmm. Just so quick in that regard. He rocks, man. He really does. Like, I mean, he can deal with guys on his hips. He'll put guys in jail. He's a legit guy. He's legit, man. Like, he's gonna have teams. That's why this draft is so fun, because it's not just Cooper at the top. Like, Nolan's like a legit guy. Like, I mean, Nolan I think he would have gone 1 in this draft.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
in this past draft, right? Like. He's one of those guys that you're going to look at and be like, oh, he would have gone first in the 2024 draft. So, really good.
Just really good. And Corey, just like to your point about like his in between mid range at the hoop, at the rim stuff, like there's a lot of savviness to his game, which goes back to what I talked about with him, right? There's a maturity to his game. He's reading angles. He's got great touch on those floaters. He can throw it up high off the glass. He's just a really, really smart player that clearly, as we've seen through the testimony of other players, just a guy that you want to play with. He knows how to set his guys up. He knows how to he knows how to pick his spots when he should go and get a bucket for himself, because I think in my mind he's doing that because he knows the next possession he's going to get a shot for his buddy or for his teammate. Like there really is a beautiful selfless aspect of his game, and I think like I read a scouting report somewhere. I don't remember what it was, and I don't mean to pretend like I don't know because I don't want to give them hate, but I actually don't remember. But they were saying how he's like more of a score first guy, but I was like, I don't know if that's true. Like I really think like his spirit is he likes to share the ball and he likes to be a team player, and so
I think he takes what the defense gives him.
Yeah, exactly. So I like his game a lot, man, and I think just overall, like I loved his frame in person too. I don't remember if I said that already, but
Broad shoulders, like
shoulders. He was cut up. It didn't seem like he was ever shying from contact when we were watching him play. So yeah, man, just a really fun guy, and I think. Like you said, Corey, he probably would have went first in this draft and in the last draft, and in this draft he might go. Who knows? Like I expect him to go really high, but would it shock you if he went 7th? Like it's possible just because of how strong this class is. I hope he goes higher. Like I'm actually.
Oh, I could see him going like 2nd.
Yeah, exactly. I still love Ace Bailey. I want to throw that out there, and I know a lot of people, not you, Corey. I've seen other people, say different things. I still love Ace Bailey, but I think it's very realistic that he could go to in this class. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting watching his season versus Dylan Harper's because I feel like there's some like compare and contrast, but a lot of similarities in like the role in which that Nolan and him will play. So I think that'll be.
I think they're similar sizes too, Corey.
That would be great. Dylan's big.
Exactly.
Dylan's a big dude.
But I thought Dylan was more broad than he was tall. If that makes sense. Like I know he's listed at what? 6'5"?
6'6".
6'6"?
Yeah.
But he didn't feel 6'6" to me. Or maybe he did, but I don't know. I don't know what it is, but he didn't seem that much taller than Nolan. I don't know. We'll see. I thought they were similar in terms of from what I saw, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's hard to eyeball this stuff.
Yeah.
Defensively, I think that Nolan is like he's good when he's like locked in. When I say that, I don't. It mean like I think the first thought is like, well, I guess he's not locked in a lot, and that's like not the case. I think he's pretty focused on the defensive side, but he's not always like being super aggressive on the ball, I guess is what I mean to say. You know, like when you watched Miles McBride or Davion Mitchell, right? Like these guys are like super aggressive on ball defenders. And like Nolan is sometimes, but I don't know whether it's just like he's picking his spots, conserving his energy or what. When he is like super aggressive on the ball because he's long and I think he's got a pretty good frame, like he could be disruptive in that regard. He moves well laterally, right? Like, so I think his offense is unquestionably going to be good enough that like it's not going to be like super concerning whether or not his defense is something that you talk about, you know, in the first paragraph of his scout. But I think that like his baseline is just like good defender, you know, like, and if he's really 6'4.5", like, you know, he'll probably be able to guard up a little bit more. But he's disruptive, I think, in the passing lanes with his length. Like he's always got his hands up. He's sound positionally, but he's not like super aggressive. Like if he's the low man, like rotating over, he's not going to be Derek White, like getting vertical and trying to block a shot at the rim, but like he'll be in the spot. I don't know how intimidating that'll be for some people, but he'll be there. So I think he's like above average ultimately.
Yeah. No, I agree. First off, Corey, I love that you mentioned Deuce McBride just because it was hilarious watching Nick's Twitter try to trade him for every center in the league on Twitter this summer. Clint Capella, Walker Kessler, all the names. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Nolan is going to be a really solid defender. There are even flashes of some defensive playmaking with him getting into passing lanes, him, being really, good with his hands and stuff. So I think there's reason to be interested, but I don't think, and I think that's the point that you're making, don't think it's going to be his calling card, right? We're not going to write him down as like, oh, defensive guard, wing, whatever. It's his offense, it's his playmaking. That stuff's going to really shine. And if he's got some defense to him, even better. So,
yeah. because the offense is, it's got a chance to be, I don't know if I want to say special, but like really, really good. He's got a chance to be a really, really good offensive player with his combination of like playmaking and scoring, his seamless ability to fit into different lineups and contexts. Like he's got a lot of like really high level experience at this point. Like he's going to come in as like a really interesting guy that teams are really going to want and, potentially run the show. And I think one of the things, we might have mentioned it, but like even watching some of these clips and highlights that we're playing, like again, like his burst is really underrated. Like he's got elite burst. Yeah. Like because he's got that big strong frame. He's so slippery and smooth. Like were there any guys you thought that he kind of plays like?
Corey, at times he looked like smaller Lonzo Ball to me. I don't know if it's his body. Not one for. I'm not talking about his game per se. Just like the way he looked aesthetically. At times he looked like a shorter Lonzo Ball, but that's all my head went to be honest.
Because I think he plays like a shorter Cade, but like maybe a better ball handler than Cade.
There it is. Yeah.
He's like more point. Like Cade is more. I mean, God, that Pistons team. At least they got him some pros. But
my heart breaks for him every day.
Yeah, like so. Hope maybe his playmaking will pop a little bit more this year. But yeah, like a more like playmaking tilted Cade Cunningham Nolan kind of reminds me of. And like if the scoring comes around a little bit more, like with the wiry strength and the mid range and the kind of like tight spaces. Maybe some SGA in there. Not to say that he's going to be as good as either one of these guys, but like just stylistically, like I see a little bit of both of those guys in him. And at this point in the season, we're going to be optimistic with our comps. This is the time for it. So yeah, really fun player. And he was definitely one of the guys on that world team from the Hoop Summit that we get to see that popped no matter, you were playing with him, against him, you were coaching him, right? Like scouting him, he popped for everybody. And, that's not always meaningful because there were a lot of guys who didn't have great Hoop Summits last year who ended up having really great seasons, but sometimes it's very meaningful. So,
or you get
Nolan Traore
taken first in the draft, like Risa Shea. So,
right. Good at basketball, these guys. So I'm excited. We got back in the saddle and got to talk some hoops and some prospects, and we're excited, I think, to bust these out like we did last year. We got to cover a bunch of guys in a short time frame, and we're gonna do that again. Kind of do like 3 guys a week and sprinkle in some film sessions in there with some players throughout the offseason as well. So, all right, we did it. We did it, man.
I don't even know how long it's been since we recorded, Corey, but it felt like we never left. This was great. Really fun.
Great. Yeah. Loved getting back into the scouting lane too. And, 'cause we around draft time, we're doing all these different shows and, we're guests and we're getting asked questions. Here we get to just, for the love of the game, just the beauty of scouting deep in the weeds. So, all right. Yeah, I know that, the Tylers have been active. Steven and Maxwell have been potting. So the No Ceilings NBA podcast is back in a big way, baby. Like, we're going to have a bunch of great shows the rest of this summer, the rest of this off season. And then 2025 is going to be an unbelievable draft cycle. There's so much damn talent in this class. And we're going to keep, giving it to you, whether it's, the Draft Sicko show talking about guys from D2 programs or, us breaking down the games of the nitty gritty, the Tylers talking about current events, Nick on deep dives, breaking down some of our writing and stuff. All of the guests that we have, lock in, subscribe. If you're here watching live on YouTube or on Twitter, we appreciate you for rocking with us. Make sure you subscribe, like, all the good stuff. And we will be back next week probably. So stay locked in. Till that time, we're out. Peace.